Cool. Any more questions in the room here? Yeah. Okay. One more.
All right. Throw the mic. No,
so what are some of the tips you have in terms of keeping your open source developers motivated, especially in the beginning phase, or maybe you have some adoption, but maybe developers are starting to get tired of that free contribution to your project? Do you have any tips in terms of how do we continue to motivate the developers to continue committing to that project?
That's a really good question. Who wants to take this one first? Oh,
nice. So my focus around open source has generally been more around the people. So how do you get people to be excited about this? How do you get the energy driven into the project? How do you align interests so that people get benefits from participating in the project? How do you allow for a contributor to grow within a project through maybe status or through skilling or through just the community, the connections, the potential recruiting opportunities, like all of these things. If you are building the on-ramps into your project and out of your project and around your project with all of these things in mind, then you have mentorship rings, you have the ability to help those people grow within the community to a position of leadership, which then potentially may help them get jobs. So you find ways that participation benefits each individual. So it's not just I give you all of this and I get nothing back. So there has to be some sort of reciprocation in this, and there has to be some way that the community and the contributor engagement is matched up with what those contributors need or want from that community and that growth in their career.
So I've got a bit of a question based off that then. So the open source bootcamp we run here, we have a regular mentor who comes and helps out. Apollo is a GitHub campus expert at UW. And he was using Swift. He wanted to get QR codes in Swift because he didn't have it. He ended up making that contribution to the Swift project. And then from there, he got an internship at Apple working on Swift, which is absolutely fantastic. But how do you scale that? You know, that's great for one developer, and you've kind of got that nurture stream for one developer. But if you've got 10 developers, 20 developers, how do you scale that motivation out? You know, one-on-one mentoring time doesn't scale.
Well, I think there's two pieces. I mean, and Sarah knows this because she basically lived this for the Kubernetes community. You know, and I think but I would say that I think that there's two pieces. One is you have to scale the community part of the community, right? And so you have to give the people who are excited about the community, maybe more than the code, the opportunity to become core members of the project, core people who drive the project forward. So, you know, we created a group of people in the Kubernetes community who are oriented around contributor experience and how do we make the first pull request really great and how do we make the next. And I think that helps with the scaling because now you have 5 people that are interested in it, not just one person who's interested in it. I think the other thing that I would emphasize a lot is distributed ownership. And I think, again, the Kubernetes community did a really, really good job, very intentionally at the start where we were like, no offense to Guido, but like not big fans of the benevolent dictatorship model of open source. And so we very purposely gave away a lot of power at the beginning, and then we very purposely sharded the power. So it was like, we're not going to have a dictator, but then also we're going to identify individual places where people can become owners. You can be the owner of Node, or you can be the owner of disks, or you can be the owner of, or you can be a tech lead. And we identified a whole bunch of different kinds of roles that could enable people to take personal ownership and believe that this project was theirs. And I think that's the other part of how you scale is that people stay motivated. Sure, if their career is getting better, sure, if they're excited about the project, but if they feel like it's their project and that kind of their pride is on the line, they will stick around even more. And not just stick around because you've trapped them, but actually stick around because they want to see this thing succeed. And so I think that's another, I mean, when you look at how I don't think. I mean, it sounds like I'm tooting our horn up here, but like, I don't think another open source project has scaled the way we did, and I think it's because of how we structured it.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a slightly different model, but also there's such a wide amount of folks, you know, certainly in the Terraform community, and even in some of the other product communities as well. The recognition comes in a couple of different forms. Some is like ambassadorship so we have open source ambassadors who are folks who have been just working on this stuff for a long time. You know, we actually hire folks that have been, you know, big contributors within our software project because you know, they have shown that they have a proficiency, they've shown that they have a desire, and we're scaling out as a company. And so we have room to hire some of these folks into these projects. And then because there's lots of like other, you know, sort of areas around open source tooling, we're seeing actually a lot of folks who are creating open source alternatives even to like our enterprise offerings that are out there. And while, you know, somebody like a JPMC may not adopt those, there's other folks that are just like, hey, you know, we can adopt this because it's, you know, we have a small team, we can do these things. And not only that, now you have this kind of prestige and recognition. And then those folks, you know, who knows whether we would acquire somebody like that because they're, you know, they to a certain extent, you know, compete with what we have. But there is some prestige that's in there within those communities, within those ambassadors, within the folks that are sharing. They come to the conferences, they talk about all the cool stuff that they do. And that recognition, this comes back to this whole thing about the community building. You know, you're not getting a chat GPT, you know, that particular developer that's doing all these cool things because that it lacks the context to know that there's a need for that. It's the humans that would use that to like generate the stuff that they need. And sure, they may get prestige by, you know, sort of wrapping that in there. But, you know, the cool thing is like we can recognize those folks. Oh, sorry, I had like some stuff on the background. Was there a question there? Or maybe some feedback? Okay. Anyways, so, you know, again, it's a slightly different model for us than maybe what happened with the Kubernetes community, but it's that recognition that the ability to rise up the prestige, to put those developers forward. And again, we see that, you know, within our communities as well, but it is back to that community. We have to take that time, and we're very committed to working with our community and making sure that folks get sort of promoted externally outside the company for their contributions and whatnot as well. So again, cornerstone is that that promotion side stuff. And again, yeah, maybe we'll hire you. You know, if you're really contributing that much, we'll have room for that.
It's kind of one of the classic motivational models of corporate is people work for two things: pay and praise. Mm-hmm. Now, as you talked about earlier, there is no pay in open source, but there is praise. So having these kind of promotional activities, having ambassadors, a hero program, something like that, where you recognize the efforts people are doing, you celebrate the community, that is the motivation that they need to carry on their contributions.
Status, access, power, stuff. Those are the 4 classic gamification motivators. And that works in any open source community. Whether it's status, I now become a lead of a sub project, or access, I get to talk to Brendan. Or power, I can make this decision for the node group. And I just knocked my glasses off. Or stuff, it's swag. It's the specialty t-shirt that is a logo that is artistically drawn for a specific event that you were at, that you can then trade and tell stories with your community with. Like, this is about lore, and this is about engagement, and this is about building the next generation within each of these projects. When Brendan and I were building what we refer to as the bootstrap steering committee, we don't have anything to derive power from. How are we going to decide how we make these decisions? When we were working through that, one of the big questions we asked was, how do we make sure that there are multiple generations of leaders, and that every time we are looking to move someone out because they maybe are working on a new project, that there is a person who has been brought forward and has been working as a leader in that project and who can step into that role as a leader. So you're always working to bring someone up along behind you.
Is that another question? Okay. So you kind of got that succession planning model, always. You have to have that in there for the project to keep on going. Awesome. Just flipping over to the YouTube chat here. If you're watching online, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. But Main Digit says, great that you bought the idea of collaborating with quality of commits rather than number of commits. Yeah, I think it's a big thing. It's not about a numbers game. I know there was a recent roasting on Twitter where somebody said, don't apply to be a senior dev if you've only got one green square on your GitHub profile, which is a terrible thing to say. Yes, it's not about the number of commits, it's about the quality of the work that you're doing.